Hmm. Hello, hello, and welcome to all of you beautiful soul sisters. Thank you for joining me here today on the Heart of the Soul podcast. My name is Amana, and I am so happy that you're here. This is a space where we explore what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth, connecting about that which is often unseen and unspoken through the ancient ritual of storytelling. It's my hope that soaking in these stories will bring you closer to your own innate knowing and center you into a more embodied and alive version of your beautiful, unique self. Today is Thursday, December 5th, 2024. It's a little after 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, where I am located in Chattaroy, Washington. Our moon is currently waxing towards a full moon in Gemini that will happen on Sunday, December 15th. Today, I'm honored to have Rachel Burr with me here through the cosmos on Zoom. And I would love for you to take a moment and tell people where in the world you are and introduce yourself a little bit in whatever way feels good to you right now.
Well, thank you, Amana. I am, as you said, Rachel Burr. I am in the Bay Area of California, so I'm just about an hour east of San Francisco. It is a beautiful day out today, blue skies. I am an executive coach, soon to be author, and a people expert. So I love understanding how people work inside and out, individually and together. And with that and my wanting to explore and understand, I coach leaders to help them step into the best version of themselves, and by extension, helping their team, their people, also step into the best version of themselves and achieve their greatest potential, or greater, but as much as a full expression of themselves as possible.
Yes. What do you feel like is an important part of being a leader? Like, what's an aspect that some people don't think about but really affects leadership?
Listening,
Listening.
fundamentally.
Yes, of course.
I work with a lot of leaders that believe that, and this is more because we don't typically train people to be leaders. We may
Mm,
think we do, but typically leaders are chosen because they're very good at their function. They're very good at business.
hmm.
Those are very important. It is not the same as leading people,
Yeah.
the doing and leading. And I think, and especially maybe I may be wrong, but especially in Western culture, and maybe especially in the US, we have this idea that a leader has to be out in front and taking charge and, kind of the leading by telling. Although I believe that awareness is shifting. Um, and really, it's about being able to listen, ask questions, understand, and then take decisions from that point that will serve the purpose and the goals. It doesn't mean that everybody will agree when you have a huge organization. You're not going to get thousands of people to have the same perspective.
Hmm.
But on a team, we offer different perspectives, and that information is important in terms of feeding that ultimate decision. And leaders that keep themselves in a vacuum are destined for failure. May seem very strong, but I do believe that whether it's failure for the business or failure for the group or the people, they will they will lose good people. They will miss opportunities. They need to listen. We all need to listen.
Hmm. Yeah. What was it that drew you to this world of like business and leadership?
Well, I think ultimately, in terms of, I'll take that higher kind of maybe piece of it and then talk about the people part under it. I love working with leaders for two reasons. One, when leaders are effective, there is that exponential impact on their organization, their team. It flows throughout, and I would say it's trite but true. Leadership is lonely. And
Mm.
having someone that you can really talk to in a safe space, bounce off the walls if you need to, that is so powerful. And it's also reaffirming. I work with a lot of leaders that when they struggle, they feel it's just them
Mhm.
because people don't talk about imposter syndrome at that level, right? They
Yeah.
they feel it's important that everybody sees them not as perfect maybe, but kind of close. So being able to help them hold that space and watching them take off their armor with me and really explore how they want to improve not only their leadership, but maybe just themselves as human beings, it's exceptionally gratifying.
Hmm.
How I got here, well, one, it was a very circuitous route. The big highlight, which I actually find is very important. I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey of self-discovery and figuring out what I don't want to do as much as what I do.
Hmm.
Uh, I started on the path to be a clinical psychologist.
Hmm.
And because again, that same fundamental people aspect was really important to me. My dad's a therapist, so maybe it's because it's a family business kind of idea. um, However, and I give huge props to my former kind of colleagues that still continue to do this work. It is very difficult. And
Hmm.
especially, I was working with folks who were struggling with very severe mental illness. So, folks who were struggling with schizophrenia, personality disorders, bipolar, depression. And right now, from either a therapeutic perspective or a medical medication perspective, we have not yet found really good support for those folks to help them flourish. We are doing the best we can, and as human beings, we obviously we struggle. We're making progress, but there is so much room to grow, and I really wanted to help people step into that best kind of self, the flourishing part. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are struggling just to stay functional.
Hmm.
And like I said, I honor the work that the folks who are doing, working with them is extremely difficult. And some people feel very strongly called to do that. And I honor and admire that. And for me, I realized that wasn't my path.
Hmm.
I wanted to help people. I wanted to work with them. And I wanted to, and it is the name of my company is Catamentum, and it's really catalyzed momentum, squished together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I can see the sparkle. I can see the potential to thrive.
Hmm.
And I want to help people achieve that. So
Yeah, and of course you carry
yeah.
with you those skills. Like I
Oh,
used to be a registered nurse and a palliative care nurse, and so I carry with me those tools, and I have a degree in sociology, but it doesn't mean that I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a
mhm.
registered nurse anymore, but I still carry with me those experiences that are really valuable, so I can understand how this would also be valuable in your work. Um, I wonder if you have a story you could share about when you experienced someone else being a great leader for a group that you were a part of, or maybe a time when you had a really great time when you were in leadership leading a group of people.
I will choose to talk about some of the other leaders that have had such a meaningful impact on my life. And I can think of I've been very fortunate to actually be with leaders who are very powerful and effective, and even leaders who weren't in their own way. I one of my things, and this is maybe sometimes a strength and sometimes taken too far becomes a weakness, but I see pieces in almost everyone that is good and that what who they are and being able to connect to that point. We may have vastly different experiences, lives, even beliefs on many levels, but I see the good in them. And sometimes I can see the good too long, and I always kind of say I hope for the best, but hope is not a plan. And I can't change if the person doesn't want to shift. I can't do that for them.
Oh.
So, and sometimes it takes me a while to accept that. So I tend to give a little too much leeway, but given the alternative, I'll take that. Um, so I mentioned to you before we started, I've written a book, and one of the examples of leadership that I always come back to was this particular leader that I had. I was living in North Carolina. I was working for a very big home building company at the time, right about the time we hit the recession in 2008. So very exciting. And he was just warm, and he really treated me as a partner. And we worked together exceptionally well. And it came time for my annual performance review. And really, that is more of a, at least in when done well, it's more of just a summary of all the conversations you've already had, not really a surprise for the individual, which is the purpose. And so, very comfortable going into the meeting with him. Sat down, and he got so excited on the development part. He's like, so I was doing strategic marketing at that point, because when I left graduate school, I thought, okay, what are my building blocks? What can I do? And as opposed to what I know I want to do. And I knew people and I knew research. So I started in strategic marketing, and he was so excited. And he said, okay, so he's like, what's next? Do you want to be a director of strategic marketing? And I said, not really. No. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, what do you want to do?
Hmm.
And I said, I want to do organization development. And he's like, great. What is that? And I will tell this story in every leadership and management program I've ever done, because that is a good manager. That is a good leader. Because what happened next was, within a month, I think he came back to me and said, okay, you have an interview in Atlanta. And I'm like, for what? And he said, there's a new job at corporate, which was in Michigan, that is around, you're going to be working for as a national strategic marketing manager, going to be working with the head, the VP of marketing. And he's looking to create a role where the information that we provide, being able to train leaders on how best to use that when they're serving their customers.
Hmm.
He's like, I know you want to do organization development. We don't have those titles right now, but if I get you to corporate, you'll be closer to those opportunities when they come up, or finding what you want. So
Hmm.
he and my vice president at the time had put my name in the hat for this. I really wasn't sure about it. And he said, well, what do you have to lose? Just go to the interview.
Yeah.
Right. And I was almost sure. And my brother was living with me at the time, and he had moved down to be with me. And when I said something about moving to Detroit, you should have seen his face. He was just like, no. But I said, don't worry, don't worry. I won't be taking this job, because I knew I didn't want it. And after I walked out of the interview, I'm like, oh my gosh, this was such an amazing opportunity. And it was going to get me closer. I was going to get to do, development and helping people learn and helping people, do their jobs better. And maybe it wasn't the title, but it was a piece of where I wanted to
Mhm.
go. And long story short, I took that role, and it was and my brother did come with me, actually, which
Aw.
was good. It was awesome. And I just think about that path, and I think about my manager, who had been such a mentor. And some leaders, they want to keep talent, right? They're like,
Mhm.
oh, I so rely on this person. I can't imagine letting them go. And I know I've talked to leaders before that feel that way. And also they'll say something like, but if I develop this person, they might leave. And I'm like, well, two things, right? They might leave anyway. And if you don't develop them, far more likely they will.
Mhm.
Or if you don't develop someone, they might stay. And then what? It's like you've got someone who's in stasis, right? And not growing. And so it takes a very strong leader to one, hire people who could take your job, even
Mhm.
somewhat offer them, like, and show
Yeah.
them that they could take your job, and then support them in their goals and their dreams, even if you don't understand them because
Mhm.
you don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But you believe in them and you want them to grow. And so you let them go and you support them in getting where they want to be. So for me, it is a story I tell over and over. And he is so humble and I've told him that I tell people this all the time. And it was a huge point of movement. It was a huge pivot in my life that I, I don't know that I would have achieved without him.
Yeah, and he could have like shut you down and said, "Oh, we don't
He could
have
have,
that here," and get back to what, you've already been doing or something like that. So,
yep,
how,
absolutely.
how amazing that he did that with you and for you.
Yes.
Yes. So you mentioned briefly your book. Tell me more about this book that you are in the process of writing. I love you described it a little bit before we started recording, like the butterfly in the goo, and that is like butterfly is one of my spirit animals. My website is Birthing Nova, and it's not just,
Love it.
I mean, I do connect with, I want to be a light to people in their birthing times, which is not just birthing humans, but also I believe we birth ourselves over and over again. We birth ideas, you're birthing a book. Like,
Yes.
okay, so tell me about this book.
So let me describe it a little first, and then the title will make a little bit
Yeah.
more sense. So, and also people have asked me, well, what inspired you to write this book? And I truly believe this. I feel it is this book has been trying to write itself through me for a very long time.
Mm,
And I finally stopped fighting it.
yes.
This originally started out as more of a self-help book. And yet I was going to pull memoir into it as kind of an example. And really
Mm,
what it's turned out to be is a humorous memoir with self-help components if you want to personally step into your own change journey. So this really goes back to when I left. I was, clinical psychology and having no idea. All I knew was I didn't want that. And it took me a long time. I had been grappling with that and trying to force myself to want something I didn't want because I really wanted to want that, but I
mhm,
didn't. And that was kind of, I would say, one of the first rebirths, to your point. One of the things I love is that, a caterpillar gets one butterfly, but we are not limited to one transformation. And so following that path and watching, the struggles, the foibles, the triumphs, and kind of going through. And what I do is I leverage the hero's journey, and I call it the heroine's journey.
yes, thank
Joseph
you.
Campbell, he had a heroine's journey, but it was not what we think of. So, but I am a heroine, and therefore that is my story, and it's everybody's story, really. So I'm very clear that I'm loosely basing it on that, but also start off with, you got to be kidding me, right? It's not this nice, tiny little circle, tight, like, okay, we have this, we have this. That is not what transformation looks like. It is messy, it is gooey, it is frustrating, it is exciting, it is all those things. And I feel like we have propagated the illusion that transformation is this, like, this burgeoning aha that one day it just happens.
Mhm,
And I'm trying to dispel that myth through my own experience and being my own vulnerability and laughing at myself because
mhm,
I want transformation to be more understandable
mhm.
and therefore accessible and therefore more achievable than what it is now. Because and to your point about the butterfly, I also resonate so much with the butterfly. I always have. And part of it, it's not just the beauty and the magic of it. It's the fact that a lot of times the beauty distracts us from the slog of the goo, right?
Mhm,
And the butterfly, so the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis.
mhm,
Just as a side, I actually say cocoon because it's a it's more of like how we connect it. But my entomologist brother was very clear that moths go into cocoons and caterpillars go into a chrysalis or butterflies. And
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, but people aren't going to connect that. And he's like, yeah, but moths are much cooler. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sticking with the butterfly. um, but we go into this, this kind of this create the chrysalis, create the opportunity, and then they dissolve into this gelatinous goo, right? And that transformation, creating something new, the caterpillar takes everything it needs into that chrysalis. It is not creating itself into something it isn't already. It
Yeah.
has the building blocks, right? So it's
Yes.
not about turning ourselves into something we're not. It's about finding that most beautiful version of ourselves that really is going to help us live this, expanded life for
Mm-hmm.
us. And I truly believe that if we are able to see the goo, if we are able to see the slog and not think we're doing something wrong and not thinking it's just us, but if we can see that and understand it, then we won't expect to be born butterflies because we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book is entitled Butterfly Goo: The Down and Dirty Truth of Transformation.
Mm. Awesome.
I'm
Yeah. Love it.
excited.
Yes. Is there, I know you said it's sort of a memoir and guide. Is there a story that you share within the
Mm.
book that might be relevant here? Um,
Absolutely. So
yeah.
it goes from, it's not an entire, like a memoir is not an autobiography, but
Yeah.
the piece from where I leave graduate school and not having like, and jumping and not having any idea where I was going to land or even what, this kind of, you think about, I always have this vision of actually being on a train and it's speeding forward and you realize it's not actually going anywhere you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is there are two kinds of people on the train. There are people who really want to go where the train is going and they're
Mm-hmm.
excited to do that.
Yeah.
And there are other people who, like me at that time, they also didn't want to go where the train was going, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to get off either.
Yeah.
So at some point, you have to leave. And in my mind, it was this like, the sliding door of kind of the old trains, the maybe more kind of the cargo or, kind of that kind of train, and having this fog below you and having no idea what's down there and trusting not so much where you're going to land, but trusting yourself to figure it out
Mm-hmm.
and just taking that leap. And I was very fortunate. I had things in my life that I felt would support me, even though I had no idea what I was doing, no job, no direction, no vision. um, and yet finding the pieces that were going to support me in that process. And I follow that journey through those many kind of iterations. Kind of the Campbell's first part is the hearing the call and rejecting the call. Very clear rejection on my part. Couldn't even imagine leaving this place that I was very comfortable in my discomfort. Um, it was safe.
Yeah.
I was miserable, but yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah.
Um, and then watching that evolve over time, that I didn't get to the end by, snapping my fingers or, this idea of, kind of it just happens to you. And I'm a big believer that we build our path. We make decisions. We take those steps, and we don't have to know where that's going when we start. In fact,
Yeah.
even if we think we know, a lot of times that's not where we end up.
Yes,
um,
but we have to be willing to take that risk and take
we
that.
do, we
Yeah.
do, and we can only start from where we are.
Yeah.
Period. Right. And so watching me, and again, the humor is very important and the humor is self-directed. So it's very much looking at me, and my humor and voice are such an integral part of who I am. And,
Yeah.
I love that. So I want people to laugh along the way. I feel humor, when done correctly, not used as a weapon, but used as an opportunity to help people laugh and engage, it's a huge way to help people feel vulnerable and safe in that vulnerability. And in my sense, laughter is about like opening yourself up. And so I really tried to be vulnerable in this journey. At the end of each section, there are my takeaways, not meaning what you should take away, but what I learned in this process. And I always say, take, tweak, or toss. If these resonate with you, great. If they don't, or there's parts of it, take that. Or you know what? Come up with your own. Like, great. Do that. This is your life, your adventure. I'm just here as kind of like, a guide or coming along with you on your journey. And then with each section, there's going to be a corresponding exercise in the playground. And I call it a playground because it really is. It's not about even focusing and driving towards change. If you want to do that, great, do that. If you just want to mess around and kind of see what shows up, then do that.
Mhm.
If you want to just read the book and take the Schadenfreude that it's laughing at my life and being lucky you're not me, then do that. This is your journey and you get out of it what you choose. I'm just here to help support you, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, lovely. I am curious as you're speaking about like taking this leap off the train. What
Mm.
do you feel like there is something in your life that you can name that helped give you the courage to take that leap? Like for me, um, one of the things that aspects that the experiences that have led me and helped me to be more courageous is a like seeing people be courageous around me, but also like my
Yeah,
my very first love, he died when he was 26 and I was 25.
yeah,
And witnessing him go through that process, knowing that he was going towards the end of his own life with cancer, that he wasn't going to get to live and not have the opportunity to take risks and live life in the full way that he wanted to, or not to say that his life was complete and full at that time, but he had yearned to live more years and gather more time. And it was that close relationship that really changed me, death being this huge teacher in my life that no one is guaranteed tomorrow. And
yeah,
it's helped me to live more courageously than I know that I would have, at least at that time or in my younger years, not having had him in my life. So I'm
yeah.
I'm feeling curious for you, like, is there something you can name that has helped you have the courage to take this leap and these leaps? Yeah.
I think absolutely what you're saying is around about having people around you that support and encourage you and model that change. And what I want to do is speak to the folks also that are out there. I've had the other experience where um, things had to break enough for me to realize that I needed to let go. I needed to let go of the illusion of what I wanted it to be versus the reality of it, what it was. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I've had that whole thing, and I want people to understand that if you don't have those models, if you don't have that around you, that's not the only way to take the courage to get there. And I actually start the book, I think, with a quote from me that something to the effect of, the courage to change is when the looming dread of the fear of the unknown is outweighed by the looming dread of the same. And I've had those moments where something had to break enough where I was like, and it was this release where it was still scary, but staying safe, which we're not safe anyway, but staying safe was no longer attractive. It was no longer good enough. In fact, it was something that would help propel me forward. So, and sometimes I need a proverbial bash on the head from the universe to like move me along. Like there might be some nudges at first, but eventually it's if I don't listen, it's
Yeah.
good old bash to the head. So I think I definitely had some of those moments. And then I had the moments where, and I talk about this in the book, where my brother came to live with me. And while initially the idea was that I would help him grow, I would support him, I learned a lot from him. And I think that's sometimes we see what other people can teach us, but we don't see what we can teach them. And what I learned watching him, he was so inspiring because I watched him change his life radically, beyond anything I could imagine. And that inspired me too, even though I was actually coming along to support him. His own change inspired me to make more changes in my life. And so there are so many opportunities and ways that we can find inspiration and hope and courage. And I will say that I think Brene Brown said this, but don't quote me, that courage is just fear walking. That
Yeah.
I truly believe that bravery, the labels of bravery and courage are things that other people project onto us
Hmm.
because and it's important to normalize that I can be moving forward and feel terrified within
Yeah.
myself. And that's normal. It's very unpleasant, but it's normal. So I work with like a lot of my clients that think, okay, when I feel this, then I'll do that. When I feel this, I'll do that. And yes, it can work that way. And the tricky little thing that, the gremlins in your head don't tell you is that if I go do this, I will build courage. I will find out that this won't kill me, or I will find out that if I fall, I can get up, or I will find out that I can succeed and I did this. And eventually we get so far past where we started that we almost can't even imagine what it was to be that version of ourselves anymore. And so
Yeah.
I feel like I have had the panoply of opportunities and inspirations that come in very different shapes and forms.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I know one of the like top regrets of the dying is that they weren't like true to themselves, or that they didn't take certain risks and be the person that they knew that they could be. And so that's often something like I talk with women about too, is like, well, if you didn't try, might you regret not trying? Like, and if you do try, will you regret that? And most of the time they're like, I'm much more likely to regret not trying than to try. And maybe it won't go perfectly, but you'll have that experience to move forward with. Uh,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
if I can build on that just 1 second, because I
sure.
think I love what you just said. And I think sometimes what happens is when we don't try because we are afraid to fail, we're afraid to
Mhm.
step outside our comfort zone. I also think sometimes when we don't try, we delude ourselves into thinking, well, I could have succeeded if I tried. So it's this safety of I didn't actually try, but I could have done that. And it's just another chain that's keeping us locked into the very small space that we have created for ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Or that we feel like society has put us in a box and this is where
Oh,
to stay for the people around us to feel safe and comforted and all those things too.
absolutely. Well, and our
Ah,
brains work in boxes. That our old brains. And I always tell people, look, and I even put myself in a box sometimes, and I have to again realize I'm doing that. It's like, okay, stop it. But I will say, it's like, look, I can't stop you from trying to put me in a box,
mhm.
but hell if I'm going to make it easy for you.
Yeah, I like that. On your website, you say that when interacting with clients and customers, perception is reality. Will you tell us more about that?
Yes. So we often say that perception is what more important or more influencing the reality. We all walk around with our perceptions. I mean, even just our physicality. I always loved that question. If a tree falls in the wood and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? And I'm like,
Mhm.
it it doesn't make a sound anyway. It makes, and I may be getting the physics wrong, but it makes a wave or it makes a ripple or something. Our ears are set up to hear it as a sound.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
Hmm.
our perception is our reality. And sometimes it actually takes quite a bit to shake us from that reality. Going back to we were talking, something has to break enough
Hmm.
because our filters, and we don't obviously don't realize we're walking around with them, that then something happens and we feel that aha moment, we feel that shift.
Hmm.
And once you have that shift, you can't go back to seeing the world the way you did.
Yeah, you can't unsee it.
You
Yeah.
can't unsee it. And so we have to work with people's perceptions where they are now. And especially I tell leaders, I'm not saying we won't change them. I'm saying recognize them as opposed to leaders saying, well, they shouldn't see it that way or they shouldn't believe that. It's like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
You're operating you're operating in a world that doesn't exist. And
Yes.
so understanding that, and so much, of our lives and as human beings, we are wired for emotion because we are wired for threat. Now, I love that having a mindset of abundance, I think is very, important. And it's also a luxury of not having my life threatened every day by
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? And so unfortunately, we have this hardwiring that is very old and software that's very old in our heads, the amazing machine, but it was trained when, our lives were threatened on a daily basis. We lived in very small groups. The idea of being ostracized really did mean death.
Hmm.
So recognizing and meeting people where they are, meeting your team where they are, meeting yourself where you are,
Hmm.
and then operating within that and helping people shift perspective. That is what creates change. It's not telling them that their perceptions are wrong. It's not telling them that why this isn't. It's about working with them. And that's what I love about my clients. I'm not there. And a lot of them, especially leaders who have been asked to come work with me by their managers or HR or sometimes an employment attorney, which is not a good way to be there, is right. They'll say, "Oh, well, what is this training program that you have?" And I'm like, I don't have a training program. It's not a program. This is you. We're here to talk about you. And we will tailor this experience based on who you are at your core, who you want to be, the armor that currently you're wearing that you don't want to wear anymore because it's heavy. And, while in battle, very important, outside of battle, very detrimental.
Hmm.
So helping people recognize that we can say all we want about what it should be, what it shouldn't be, what people should see, how they should think. That won't help. You're not engaging with reality. You need to engage first with reality if you want to alter it.
Yes. Why is it important for someone to know their inner self when they're in leadership?
I think it's important anytime.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
but you're right that
Yes,
it's especially so.
it is. Well, because as a leader, we have a huge impact on those around us. We
Hmm.
have, and those kind of around, and the concentric circles that is like an archer's target. There's us,
Yeah.
there's maybe our team immediately, there's their team.
Yeah.
And I think we get caught up again in what people think we should be, the boxes we're supposed to be in. And leadership is a big box, right?
Yeah.
Well, or one could say it's a small box, and we forget that leaders are people. I read articles all the time that say leaders should do this, leaders should do that, managers. Yes, and they are people, and they are imperfect, and they are flawed, and they are wonderful. And let's not forget their humanity in this, because otherwise we're putting them in a box too.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really important because a lot of the way we talk about leadership, the way leaders are maybe expected to show up is that there's this cookie cutter, that this is what leadership is. And you have to push yourself into those cookie cutters.
Hmm.
And what I love about the analogy is that when you push a cookie cutter into the dough, I remember doing this with my mom and thinking, yeah, you get this perfect little, let's say, star, for example,
Hmm.
but you leave all of this doughy goodness around that didn't fit in the mold, right? And so I tell them, I am not here like the caterpillar. I am not here to turn you into something you're not. I am
Hmm.
here to help you find the best version, most authentic version of yourself and bring that to the role that you're in, which may have different expectations today than it did or that it will. But figuring out who you are at your core, who we all are at our core, which is different. What are our values? What are our skills, our talents, the dreams, the things that we want to achieve, and really getting in touch with that, because otherwise we're really just trying to force ourselves to fit in these predetermined boxes, and those boxes are tight. They don't fit very well. There's this great I tend to go off onto like metaphors, so just feel free to pull me back. And I may get the metaphor slightly wrong, but there's this, I think it's a Greek or Roman myth about Procrusteus. And he was a god or demigod, I think. And he was an innkeeper, essentially, not a very nice innkeeper. And people would happen upon his inn and want a bed for the night. And he would say, that's fine, but you have to fit in the bed that I have. And if the bed was too long, you had to be stretched. If the bed was too short, he would cut off your legs. And the tricky little thing about him is that the bed never fit exactly. And so, and again, we can say he was doing it, but we were agreeing to it. We are complicit in our own stretching and cutting off and trying to fit ourselves into something that one doesn't fit and isn't even necessary. That
Mm-hmm.
if we can bring the best version of ourselves, we will be more effective, influential. We can be, a greater force in the world than when we try to stay small or stretch in ways that don't matter and are actually problematic for us because they are keeping us from being who we are in our best, fullest expression of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the Myers-Briggs test on your website,
Yeah.
and I'm a little curious. I took it years ago. I'm curious if people change. Like, does that change across time? Like when I took it I must have been in my early 20s. Now I'm in my early 40s. I was an introvert, sensing, feeling, perceiving. So I'm curious, yeah, what's your take on the Myers-Briggs? And tell me more about what you feel about it and maybe what you are in the test.
On the Myers-Briggs. Well, and let me kind of preface this too, that there are a lot of tools out there.
Yeah.
Some may be better fits for some others. Some have maybe better research base than others. For any of them, for me, they are a starting point for conversation, not a
Hmm.
box and not a permanent
Yeah.
box,
Yeah.
but a discussion for where you are. Now, some of them tend to be more consistent over time. Others tend to be more flexible. In my experience, and folks out there may disagree with me, and that's absolutely okay,
Yeah.
that while they say it's consistent, I find that when we find ourselves in different situations that is
Hmm.
requiring something different from us that may either augment or hamper parts of who we are, I
Hmm.
do see those things shifting. There's also things, for example, they talk about extroversion and introversion. And it is really important to understand what those are because sometimes words that are used in either a clinical setting or more of a kind of a professional assessment like that, they don't mean what the rest of kind of, just in general discussion, those words mean. And especially with introversion, it does not mean people are shy. People who are shy may be introverted, absolutely. My husband is shy and an extrovert. So um, introversion really means about where you get your energy from.
Hmm.
And introverts, a lot of times, they need time to recharge. Really, they need time away from folks to regain their energy. They can be very good at being very social, very connected outside, but they need time to recharge.
Hmm.
Extroverts tend to get their kind of recharging by interacting with people and picking up on their energy. And when they spend too much time alone, if they have a role, which is fine, I mean, we choose our roles and there are things that are good about it, but if part of our role is to spend a lot of times by ourselves, then extroverts need to understand that and go out and recharge with other people.
Hmm.
Now, that being said, what they've found is a lot of us, as we get older and more, maybe it's more experienced or maybe it's a life stage thing, we become more of what they call ambiverts. Whereas I used to be, I would say, more like a high extrovert. I would say now I'm more of an ambivert, that there are times I want to be highly engaged, and there are times that I just I need the world to go away. And I need time. And if you told me that when I was 20, I wouldn't have believed you. So I think it's a great starting point. It's language, and there may be some that are better than others for language. The disc, for example, is very simple. It's, four quadrants, and simple on the outside doesn't mean simple underneath in terms of research. There's things like the Hogan, and there's, Gallup, kind of leadership and strengths. First of all, recognizing that none of these put you in a box. Again, or started for a conversation. The information is interesting. It's coming from somewhere. So let's talk about how you see yourself versus what's showing up. Where are the gaps, things that you want to explore and push out? Where are the gaps that you want to explore and pull back because they're not serving you?
Mm-hmm.
And while like I said, I think at the core, we are very much who we are. I'm not saying that certain values and things don't change throughout life, but how that core gets expressed in different situations and what's required of us or what's pulled from us or what's being amplified in us does change. It not only changes with situations, especially when you swing, very far from one to the other, it changes potentially through life stage, through experiences that you have. I don't personally have children, but becoming a parent, becoming part of an integrated couple, family, work positions, picking up and moving to a completely different culture. My husband's French, so um, that's been an experience for me. So I think at different times, different pieces of that get pulled to the forefront. I think what's important to understand is what is the information I'm gathering about myself? How does this sit with who I want to be? What might it be giving me in terms of insights?
Uh,
And then, see where it goes from there. But I think people, when they think of it as a box and like consistent over time, I think dangerous sounds strong, but it's dangerous. We limit ourselves. Other
yeah.
people limit us. It makes it easy to put boxes, and those things can be weaponized where you have, well, an argument or disagreement with someone, and they say, oh, well, you're an E, and this is why you feel that way, or you're an I, or this. And it's like, that is not the tool that's supposed to be used for self-exploration.
Mm, yeah. Cool. What does the word soul mean to you?
Ooh, that's great. Well, I will say first and foremost, what it means to me is me. I have no expectation that other people feel the same way. And two things. To me, soul is this kind of idea of life force, right? That there is, and nobody can argue that. We have energy and chemicals running through our body and we are walking around. So we are alive. But I do feel like it's this life force. And sometimes I feel like it's bigger than we are, whether that's something that's connected to, kind of this larger collective consciousness. Or if it's, when people believe in a god or multiple gods, male, female, some combination thereof. For me, it's very fundamental. Previously, I would have said that who I am and my concept of self was my soul. And then I had a brain tumor. And very interestingly, now I was very lucky. And I say this, it sounds like a joke, but I don't mean it that way. That if you have to have a brain tumor and you have to have seizures and you have to have surgery, this is the way to do it. Because I was so lucky that one, the tumor was benign and it was small, and yet it had an impact while it was small because it was what's called a meningioma. So it actually exists in the material that's actually encasing the brain.
Mm-hmm.
People can have these for years and they can grow very big without any symptoms. And then what can happen is when you actually remove it, that the brain kind of actually has been damaged and you just didn't realize it until then. So very small, started causing seizures when it was still very early. I never had grand mal seizures, and I'm not diminishing this, but essentially what would happen is that I would lose the ability to understand and produce speech. And it happened when I was doing podcasts. So I had learned little words like, well, help, obviously. It felt like these were very old words that my brain could easily pull.
Mm-hmm.
And I found tell me more. And so I could get you to keep talking while the seizure passed. And fortunately, they were usually never more than a minute, except for a couple of really big ones. Um, so I went in to have surgery, and there were times even up until then, when I would have this seizure, I realized how little control I had over parts of myself. And while I still felt that I was in there, I realized there's nothing I can do, because people would say, well, what should I do, or what? And I'm like, there's nothing you can do. And with my particular seizure, you may not even notice that I'm having it, because there's not a physical manifestation, but except for the fact that I obviously am quieter than I normally am, because clearly that's not usually a problem. And the best example I can have is that, you remember in, like, Charlie Brown and the Peanuts gang, that when the adults would talk, it kind of sounded like wah 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 wah. That's pretty much the closest I can come up with of what it
Wow.
sounded like. And I remember those experiences just really, they were so fascinating, scary, all of it. And I remember being wheeled into the operating room, and I wasn't actually afraid, which kind of surprised me. Um, and I remember thinking, I mean, it's my brain. We're not talking about, kidney or my femur. And I'm like, I wonder if I'll be the same person when I come out. Like, if
Mm.
they, depending on what they do. And
Mhm.
I thought, if I'm not, I wonder if I'll know. And so it became this very fluid kind of idea of what the manifestation of me is. Um, then I haven't, solved any like huge mysteries of life. It was like a real, it was an eye opener. It was definitely a new way to see what it meant to have, like, the difference maybe between soul and consciousness,
Mhm.
and how those, at least for me, I realized that those are not those are not the same thing.
Mhm.
And I also say this because I've had people in my life that have suffered from mental illness, and my hope is that the soul is maybe this pure form of energy that's in us, and these lovely little meat sacks really
Yeah,
help
or meat
us.
suit. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like.
meat suits, right? Yeah, they help us walk around and interact and really serve us in this life. And when the brain or other things don't work properly, they are inexact and sometimes very detrimental filters for how that soul is expressed and the life it lives now, or we live.
Mhm.
And maybe that is part of the journey. Maybe that was something that was, that we learned from. And I say this very carefully, because I know there are people out there that have experienced horrific traumas that I can never imagine. And I am not one of those people says, oh, well, there must be a plan. It's more like we stepped on this planet, and the planet is very dangerous, and we have very different experiences that are part of this. But I hope that when we're released from this, that if the energy goes on in any kind of way that's conscious, then we're released from that and we come back to the purest form of ourselves. We're released from the filters. Um, and I hope that for the people that I have loved that have suffered from mental illness or other things,
Mhm.
because just having the experience in my own recognizing how the brain can affect the ability to express self, um,
Mhm.
that's huge. So I guess that's a very long explanation for how I see the soul, and also the questions, I guess, that have been raised for me based on my experiences of what that really means.
Yeah, no, I love it. I try to ask this question each episode. I don't always remember, but I love hearing all the varied responses because I never have received the same exact response. Yeah. For my final question, I would love to ask you, is there something that you find that many women don't know that you wish that they did know?
Mm, it's funny. I go back to humor. And I think we tend to take ourselves far too seriously. And I think, and I'm not saying, men or non-binary people or et cetera. I'm not saying everybody doesn't experience that. The women I have encountered, it feels like there is a perfectionism and a self-critical, we talk about gremlins or inner critics, and I feel like that weighs on us so heavily. I was laughing to my husband about something. It had something to do with what I was wearing or how I looked, and he was like, "Why do you care about that?" And I'm like, "Welcome to being a woman." This is not just me. I've been socialized for this. There may be some biological components that over many thousands of years have shown up like this. Um, we take ourselves way too seriously. We expect perfection, which is not only unattainable, but it is hugely detrimental to the beauty that we have internally. And one of the things I say in the book is, we're all wearing armor, right? We wear it all the time. And while appropriate for battle, it's very heavy and it weighs us down. And we have 24/7 access to the thing that's in the brain. And I call it kind of a Clockwork Orange torture for anybody who's familiar with that movie or book. And yet we only have like this tiny little sliver of access to who other people are. And let's be clear, it's the sliver they want us to have, right?
Right.
Social
Yeah.
media has exacerbated it, but it's always been there. And what I tell people is that little sliver sometimes seems like it's the shining, shimmering, beautiful that somebody else is. And we're comparing that to the good, the bad, and the ugly of the whole of who we are. And what I encourage people to do is to step back and instead of seeing that shining, shimmering sliver as the whole of who they are, contemplating that maybe it's just the light reflecting off their armor.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. As we close here, would you please share with the listeners where they can find you and the ways that they can engage with you and like when and where they will be able to buy your book when it's published?
That would be exciting. Yes. So, fundamentally, obviously, LinkedIn, big, kind of foundation. So just Rachel Burr, Burr. I think the actual Lincoln is Rachel M. Burr, Maureen, but I have a website. It's Catamentum, CATAMENTUM.com. Not sure if that'll be in the show notes, but
Yeah. I'll include
yeah,
everything you speak here also in the show
great.
notes in link form. Yeah.
Excellent. And more and more with the book, I want to be more engaged on, Facebook and Insta and Pinterest, and it will be under Catamentum as well. And then come January, the book, my Butterfly Goo, is going to be on butterflygoobook.net. The landing page is coming soon, and so by mid-January, you should be able to purchase it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a lot of those places, or direct from the printer. So electronic books, and hopefully not too far in the future, an audiobook, because and read by the author, because I feel like my voice and my humor, I'm not really sure, and not in any kind of arrogant way, but I'm not sure anybody could do it justice, nor would they maybe want to. So I am very excited to do that as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this time and space with me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amana. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Heart of the Soul. I would truly appreciate if you might choose to leave a rating, review, or share the show with someone that you know. You can support this podcast by donating to it using the PayPal or Venmo links. If you have stories that you would like to share on The Heart of the Soul, please send me an email through my website. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to work with me, I have both one-on-one and group offerings, online and in person. Find out more on my website, birthingnova.love. If you're listening on Spotify, you can now even send me a voice message. Until next time, remember, be brave, be loved, be wild, be you, because you are the only you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come. Sending each of you so much love. Love, love, love. Mwah.